Tonight we're going to keep working on Chapter 2 and Unit 2. Last week we got up through, I think it was page 55. We completed the steps right up until about this point. So my attempt here tonight is to kind of pick up in that spot and finish off the rest of the chapter. And I'm going to try to get the instructions done exactly as the author's indicating, because we kind of keep building on the work. So some of that is important. There's some really cool features that you're going to learn about in here that when you were doing your Web 1 work, you would have been, wow, this is so cool. I wish I would have had these tools available, when I was first learning HTML, like the ability to add a table with a couple of mouse clicks. The other thing I want to make sure that you do is go ahead and open up your IDE. I've been using Visual Studio 2015 for this series of videos. So if you want to look exactly like what I'm doing, that's the version you should use. If you happen to be using 2013, the screen should not be that much different, although 2013 by default has a darker theme to it. Then if you're using 2012, you can always refer back to the archive videos that I have. I believe all of these are done with 2012. If they're not and they're done in 2015, somebody will let me know. Because I also have older ones, if that's helpful if you're using 2012. Really, at this point, I would encourage you guys to use the latest version. And I know that in Chapter 3, I believe, there's going to be some stuff that's going to be different, menu and option-wise. And we'll stumble through that together, and then you'll see what works and what doesn't work. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to take this ebook and pump it off to my second screen here, but I'm going to be reading from it directly. I am also going to go to my folder here where my work is located. So I put everything in my Google Drive, and I have a folder for this class and for this semester. Inside that folder, right now I only have one folder, right? And that's where I'm putting my site. I call it site. You can call yours, frankly, whatever you'd like. But we're going to begin by basically giving this a right-click, copy, and then right-click, paste. And then watch what I'm going to do here. I'm going to rename that copy, and I'm just going to call it Chapter 2 up through page 55. So you see my strategy here, right? I'm going to continue my work on the plain named version of the folder, but now something happens, I have that one to go back to, right back where I left off. I know everything was fine up until that point. And whenever you guys are working on stuff and you feel like I've achieved something that was kind of a pain to achieve, I want to make sure I don't lose it, that's a point where you can stop and save your work. Now, I might not have the tendency while we're working through a chapter to stop and do that, but for you, I might suggest that you might do that several times as you're working through a chapter. There's no harm done in having too many copies. And then, people will say, should I just get rid of them all when I'm done? I'm like, sure, if you want. I tend to just keep them all anyhow. All right, so if you've done that, go ahead and go back to Visual Studio. You can close the Start page, and then go to File, Open, Website. And I'm hoping at this point you guys are getting to the point where this is kind of routine. And if you are continuously working on this particular website, you see it's already highlighted. It takes me right to the spot where I need to be. And then I'm going to go ahead and click Open. And then it's going to bring up everything inside that folder, load it up into Solution Explorer, and we'll be ready to get rolling. And then we're going to do a little bit of kind of like a remembrance here of where we left off. We were working on the default.aspx page, and I'm gathering I may not have actually saved the work, which is kind of interesting. So I'm looking at the page here and making sure that I'm looking, we were actually working on this page, weren't we? So here I am reading the instructions to make sure I'm looking at the... Nope, this is the right page. So apparently I didn't save my work last time before I quit, which is perfect because now I can repeat the steps, right? Which you guys will just love. All right, so I have completed, so I guess really what I'm doing here is I'm backtracking to the try it out exercise on page 55, and I've already completed the step where I go to the root of the site, and this is step 1, did a right-click add new item, and then added a web form called default ASPX, and that file exists right here. So this is the graphical view of it, and this is the source code view of it. Remember, you can always flip between the two. You can also go into the split mode where you can see both at the same time. And folks, just a word of advice for anybody who's been like a Dreamweaver user or anything like that. The visual view in here is not Dreamweaver. It's not that kind of visual view. It's a bit more rudimentary. But it still can be useful, as you'll see, because you can enter in information quickly and move things around pretty quickly. And the code stays pretty clean as you do it. And that's one of the reasons why we have that visual tool. All right, so what they had wanted us to do is go into that design mode and then click into this dashed box up here. And if you're not already clicked in, the box will say body at the top. But you'll see that when I click in there, it will highlight the div portion of it. And then what we're going to do is we are going to do exactly what they say in the book, and then we're going to type some text. So I'm just going to type, "Hi there, visitor, and welcome to Planet Rocks." All right, the next thing that they want us to do is they want us to highlight all that text. And you can highlight, using your keyboard. I'm holding down the Shift key and just arrowing over. Of course, you can drag your mouse across it, just some way to select it. Once it's selected, you can come up here to this toolbar that you should have visible when you're editing in this mode. If for any reason somebody does not have that visible, you let me know, and I'll show you how to turn it on. But the text is highlighted. I'm going to come up here in this drop-down box. You're going to see that you can just pick directly from a list a lot of predefined HTML components, basically. So we're going to turn this into an H1 by just clicking on that, and you can see right away it takes on that bigger font size. And if you also take a moment and look at the source code side of it, you'll see that it did turn it into an H1 tag in the code. That's pretty slick. That's a nice little tool. A little bit faster than typing the tags. Not that you're really saving that much typing, but just an alternate way to work. Now what they want you to do is go back to the design mode and then click your cursor off the end of that text so that the cursor is flashing at the end of that line. And then you press enter, and then notice as you press enter, just like what happens in a word processor, same thing, there's some sort of pre-configured code in here that saying, well, you just typed in H1 and you pressed enter, you probably want to do a paragraph next. And that's actually a pretty normal type of thing. And then they want us to type in some additional text, and they have that text here in the book, and I'm just going to pull the book over, and you can go in and type that in. And what I would encourage you to do at this point is you could copy paste the code into the code view, absolutely, but I want you to take the experience of typing it in, and I'm going to type it in as well. Part of the reason for that is just to kind of get the feel for how it manipulates things as you're typing them, how it reacts to your input. Because you can leverage the tools and the way that you're putting it in to kind of facilitate your workflow. But if you don't try it this way, you might never even know that it exists. And you might find some benefit, frankly, in working, if you're just typing in a whole bunch of stuff, doing it this way. That might be a little bit easier for you. So let's just go ahead. You can read it out of your book directly. Unlike me, who just clicked on the wrong page in the PDF here. That's what happened. I was typing and it was, moving my cursor on the page. So if you guys are following along, go ahead and do the same thing. If not, you can marvel at how slow I'm typing. You guys notice how that changed to a link automatically? It's kind of like when you're typing an email in your Gmail program, you type in a link and it automatically converts it. Microsoft Word does the same thing. That's not typical for internet editors. Now, I'm done with the first paragraph. I'm pressing enter, and now it's creating a new paragraph. If I didn't press enter, I'd still be inside the same paragraph, but it does want us to do a separate paragraph for the next part. All right, and then if you're all done, go ahead and click on the source view and then just take a look at how it automatically created the same stuff you're seeing in the book, including this weird thing. What the heck is that? Anybody recognize that notation where there's kind of like this ampersand, a pound sign, a number, and a semicolon? What the heck is that? Yeah, that is the apostrophe. It's the special character code for the apostrophe. Now, yeah, typically we don't even think about it, we'll just type in the text and put in the apostrophe, but the truth is, whenever you're dealing with single quotes and double quotes, you always run the risk of triggering a scripting engine. And what's happening here is when you're entering in the text, through the graphical interface, it automatically converts it to the character code to avoid that problem completely. Now, typically when we're inside of paragraph tags, it's not really going to break anything, but that's one thing that can cause problems when you're intermingling lots of scripts inside your code. So it's just something to be aware of. But I think it's interesting that it automatically puts it in. We wouldn't think of that normally. And technically it is better practice. I think the other thing that's fascinating here is notice that link, not only did it highlight it, it actually converted it into an href. So it created the anchor tag, it assumed http://, and then used the text that we have already and turned it into a link. Now, fair warning, that might not be what you want to happen. But that's what happens automatically in the graphical view. Of course, you can always switch to code view and undo it. And sometimes, websites have an HTTPS, or, there's additional stuff that you have to put in to really get the person to where they're going. So that's going to be on you to correct that, but it is quick and easy to create a link that actually works. Now that you've gotten this far, please go ahead and save your work. And go ahead and launch it in the browser. So I'm just going to use Google Chrome here. And we can see that it worked. Now we are going to be doing some additional tweaks to the code using some of the tools that are built into the visual editing component. And that's going to be our next step. So I'm going to Alt-Tab back to Visual Studio, and that's a trick. I'm not sure if you guys are aware of it. Many of you are. But if you want to switch applications really quickly in Windows, hold down your Alt key, press the tab key and you can cycle between all the open windows. You guys might often see me do this and wonder, how do you switch it so fast without using this mouse? And that's basically how I do it. If you only press it once, Alt Tab and release, it just goes right back to the previous program. So that's kind of a handy little tip. Also, if you're in that interface, you can actually directly go to any window by clicking on it. So just a handy little way to navigate, especially if you have a lot of windows open. It doesn't matter what monitor they're on. The Alt key and the Tab key. And that, frankly, that's a pretty old school trick. So a lot of people don't know about it, but I always, get people that ask me, what are you doing to do that? That's really cool. How'd you do that? Well, that's how. But the other thing that they are going to want us to take a look at, and I don't think that we actually did this next step, did we? I guess we're still working through that same exercise, so I apologize. Go back to the graphical mode, and what we're going to do here is we're going to highlight this text right here, paying a visit. Get the whole thing. I am going to make sure I hit that stop button. So if you guys ever like, how come his screen looks different than mine? I should have known. And you see that the play button's not there, and you got a little red, like a pause and stop, hit the stop button so you get the toolbars back. All right, so I highlighted paying a visit, and then I'm going to come up here to where the letter A is in the toolbar, and then I'm going to see that it actually provides a color palette, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose the color red, and then I'm going to say OK. And then, of course, you can see that the text did indeed turn red. And more interestingly, if you go to the source, you'll also notice that that text that I highlighted right here, paying a visit, is now surrounded with a span tag. It's a generic inline holder, like a div is block level. It gave it a class name automatically and then added an embedded style at the top of the document without us doing a darn thing. That can be awesome. I would be very cautious in some capacities, though, because what issues can you see with this? You're not learning? Well, gosh, I hope you're learning. Just because a tool does something automatically doesn't mean you're not learning. Yeah, I mean, there is the manual aspect of it, but it kind of breaks some of the things that we talk about in proper HTML5 design, which is separation of content and structure, which is the document itself, and then styles really ideally should be separated. Because who's to say that you don't want a snippet of red text somewhere else? Well, that tool automatically puts it into the document like this. Now, it doesn't mean that I couldn't strip this style out, rename it, and move it to a style sheet. I absolutely could. And then as we move into the subsequent chapters, you guys are also going to see that there's ways to take those styles using some of the more like graphical tools in Visual Studio, and then take them from embedded and move them to a style sheet using the tools built into the environment. It's not my preferred way to do it, but you should know that it's there. Okay, so that's just a little tip there. The other part that they wanted us to highlight was reviews and concert pictures. And in this case, they want us to make that bold. And in order to be able to use the toolbar, you do have to be in the graphical view. So notice you don't get that toolbar unless you're looking at the visual side of things. Reviews and concert pictures are highlighted. Did you notice I actually did the highlighting here? That's another little thing you should know, right? So if I highlight here, it'll be highlighted here. So what we're interested in, and I want to be precise here, reviews and concert pictures I'm going to click bold on the toolbar up top. You see it went bold. Switch back to the source. Take a look at what's happening behind the scenes, and it wrapped that snippet of text with a strong tag. HTML5, technically, if you want to do bold, you're supposed to use the B tag, but the strong tag is the XHTML kind of leftover. And in this case, we do whatever the IDE does naturally and just leave it alone. You know, that's a really good question. And part of the reason why I think they leave it there is because we're dealing with this. We are dealing with an HTML5 doc type, but notice that we have an XML namespace that attributes to XHTML, which is the previous standard. The reason that Microsoft puts that in there is because by having that namespace in there, we adopt the rules of strictness that XML brings to the game. And then when we start writing higher level programs that like do server-side interactions and run certain types of scripts, if that's not present, some of those scripts will not execute because they require the strictness of XHTML. I mean, for all intents and purposes, I could delete that line and everything would still work just fine. But that's the why. In an XHTML, the way that you do bold is with strong. So that's the why. Yeah, with regular HTML, they went back and they brought the bold tag back, you know, which a lot of purists will tell you you should still just do it with straight up CSS, but you know, a bold tag is really nice and simple and works. So if you guys want to just test to see that those couple little changes work, just go ahead and hit that play button again. You can see we got the red text, we have the reviews and concert pictures, we also have a link. And guess what? I think if you click it, there's actually a website for it. The author has created. So we actually linked to a real website. Very exciting. But there you go. Yes, sir. Oh, okay. So you chose a different color for the link. Oh, okay. Yeah, the first time I did it? Last week, you mean?
This time, you made the style outside for red?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, instead he made green.
I made it green, and it automatically changed it from, you would go all the way to the chapter. Yeah. Later in the chapter, you set up, basically, visiting, so once you click it,
Yeah, and we're identifying here, some of the other students are identifying the fact, based on this question, that we had a hyperlink here that's changing colors in an unpredicted way. It is because it is visited, and I think that if I go back...
I think I did click on it just right away, and then highlighted it when you come over. I think they can go on.
Yeah, they will do all the different states for the link. Like right now, the default for our browser, of course, is now that I've clicked on Planet Rocks, it's now purple. But you can override all those settings with CSS, and we will be doing that. Now, if the style is applying at the wrong, I mean, if you're getting a link that's behaving with different colors now, that means there's some sort of coding error. But my guess is that you're probably a couple steps ahead. That's probably the case. And we'll be there in just moments. So, all right, let's move on to the next exercise. The next one is about creating tables. So I'm going to jump back over to Visual Studio. I'm going to hit that stop button so I can get my toolbars back. And then I'm going to do what they say in the exercise at the top of page 58. And what they want us to do is right-click the demos folder. And from there, they want you to create a new page, or it's going to be a web form, excuse me. And we're going to call it table demo. And then I'm going to press enter. And you can see it created the file right here in Solution Explorer. And because I just used the quick little menu option to create it, it automatically did code behind. Now, the table demo automatically comes up on screen, so we're already looking at it. And it wants us to switch to Design View. And then it wants us once again to click inside the dashed box here. So go ahead and do that. Click inside there. Then, very cool, just go right up to the menu here and notice that we have a menu for table. And we're just going to click Insert Table. And I know they want us to use a certain amount of row and columns, so they want set rows to 3, so I'm just typing in 3, leave columns set to 2, and everything else default. But before you hastily rush ahead, just take a look at the other options that are on the screen here, including alignment options, setting widths and percentages or pixels, float, cell padding, cell spacing, borders, the colors of the borders, etc. So you'll notice that a lot of these are things that you probably have learned in your intro HTML class, right? And you remember how fun it was to code the table by hand, right? And then when you click the button, and boom, it creates a table. Now this is not a very beautiful view of it, but if you look at that source code, it's like, oh my God, I just saved 5 minutes of time, right? Even if you're a fast typist. And that's a cool little tool. I think it's very useful. Notice how it does insert a special character in between the table data cells. What's this one for? And yeah, non-breaking space. Right, it's forcing a space in there because you know what happens with the table if you don't put something in it? It doesn't want to display. It's not true with modern browsers, but older browsers, if you didn't have something in there, sometimes the table would just break. So to be on the safe side, all table creating tools inside of IDEs like this, Dreamweaver included, will throw in non-breaking space just to occupy the space and keep it from breaking. Notice also that it automatically generates a style to go with it. So depending on the choices that I made in that box, it would create styles to match. So it wants the width to be 100%, and notice what it did. Just did it here, and the truth is, width 100% is the default for a table. So really, it could probably be omitted, but there it is, very easy to get the table going. Let me ask, everybody who's working on this, I'm hoping you can kind of see the visual indicators here, right? The little borders and the dotted lines, because those tools, depending on what environment you're working in, they should be on by default, but those tools can be turned on and off. And there's a spot in the menu, and the book is indicating that if you go to the View menu, and there's a spot here somewhere for visual aids, wherever that happens to be. I think it's probably in here. And then basically you just turn that on and off to see those things. They should be on by default, just in case. All right, so we're going to do a couple little tweaks now to this table. And the first one that we're going to do is we're going to come in here in Design View, and you see the vertical divider and how I'm hovering over it and it changes to the double arrow. I'm actually going to grab that and drag it left, and see how the little pixel indicator pops up, and I want to try to set that to 200 pixels. Now, depending on the resolution of your screen and the sensitivity of your mouse, mine is very sensitive apparently, it might be really hard to get it exactly to 200, okay? Right, so you see, I'm not going to sit there and trouble myself trying to get it exactly to 200. I got it really close, and then I can just actually come in here and just change it in the code. Okay, so I'm sure there's plenty of you, especially people who have high-end mice that are set for really sensitive settings, or the other thing that happens is if you have a big HD display, that your mouse detailing tends to be a little harder to control. So that's how you can get it to be exactly 200. All right, you can go back to Design View. But notice once again, slight changes in the visual interface, automatically generated CSS in the code. All right, so just in case you're curious, notice I just right-clicked on just any one of the cells, just to show you this little context-sensitive menu here. I did a right click, and notice like that middle section of commands where it says insert, delete, select, modify. Notice that it's very easy, just like working with Excel, right? Think of that as a tool where you do a right click and you can insert a row or a column or delete one or a cell. You can do all that stuff right from here. We don't need to do it in this case, but if you want to play with it, like you create a table and like, oh, I need one more row, all is not lost. You just do the right click, insert a row above, and boom, you got another row, and it fixes the code automatically. So that's a pretty powerful little tool too. So even if you're a purist and you want to hand code everything, you have to admit that some of these visual tools really can, speed up, routine little tasks. Why type it? The other benefit of using a graphical tool like that to generate the code is it's not going to have a mistake in it either. So it saves you time in the creation and it saves you time in cleaning up problems. So, I do come from I like to code everything by hand train of thought, that's the world I grew up in. But you also have to recognize, the reason we have automatic transmission in cars is because that way you can talk on the cell phone and eat at the same time while you're driving, right? Yeah. People who drive stick know that you can do that with stick shift too. It's just a little bit more it's like clutch, shift, eat, bite, call. I know, and this is all going out on YouTube. This is embarrassing. All right. Next. All right. So the next thing that we're going to do is they want us to put our cursor in the first cell of the first row. So you see I clicked right in there. And then they want us to just type. We're going to type the word words, bulleted list. Then they want us to just click into the second cell. The other thing you can do, and this is very spreadsheet-like, of course, if I'm here, I can press my tab key and go to the next cell. That works too. If you guys are spreadsheet people, you know what I mean. And then it says from the format menu, they want us to choose, if I can find it here, right in the middle, thank you, bullets and numbering. And they want us to choose the plain bullets tab and then click on this item. But notice this is kind of like working with Word or Excel, right? Where you can just kind of go to the menu, click the tool, bring this stuff in. And what do you think this is going to create once I click OK? HTML experts? An unordered list, right? So I'm going to go ahead and click it. And you can see it did create an unordered list with one bullet. And what they want us to do is type in some musical genres, like, I'm just going to do the ones they have: punk, rock, techno, country, western, because there's two different things, right? All right, but you get the point. So you see how easy that was. And then if I go back to the source code again, unordered list and list items automatically generated. That's very nice. If I would have chosen one of the other bulleted options that has a non-traditional bullet, it would throw in CSS to add that particular type of bullet in there. But see, once again, much easier than typing it by hand. Once you know that the tool is there. All right, then they want us to move on to the next cell. So back to design view, click on the next box down. So first cell of the second row, and here we're just going to type numbered list. And I know you guys can probably already predict what this one's going to do. So I'm going to go ahead, bullets and numbering. This time we'll click on the numbers tab. Which one do you want to choose? Maybe the first one that has numbers on it. And then they want us to add some more musical styles. And what do they have? Jazz, hip hop, do metal. And if you don't want a fourth option, you can either press enter or just backspace. See, it tries to create a new paragraph, but you can backspace and get rid of that. And once again, go to your code, take a look. So now we have an ordered list with list items inside, piece of cake. Beautifully simple. As always, Control S to save your work, or click the little icon or icons. Click Google Chrome. You can see how nice that looks without really a lot of effort. Just, still plain old HTML, but you got the point here. All right, next thing, we're moving on to the exercise now at the top of page 61. And they want us to still be inside the table demo. So I'm switching back to Visual Studio. I'm hitting the stop button. And we are on that file. They do want us in design view, so click back to that view. And then it says in the first cell of the third row, type the text link. Go over to the next thing. I tabbed over. And then they want us to type in some text. Go to the home page of, oops, I must have hit cap lock there. Planet Rocks. And so we created some text. Next thing you should do is highlight all that text with your mouse. And then you're going to see up here in your toolbar, handy little tool. Can you see where my mouse is at? Convert to hyperlink. Kind of like submitting something in Blackboard, right? Yeah, you can do that. The point of this tool, though, Aaron, is to show you that you can do it without doing that. But yes, you can always create it manually. It's not a problem. Here's the neat part of this, though. I mean, this is the part that can save you a lot of time. It's like, oh, I got that one page in sight, and you probably have like 50 pages. I don't remember what folder it's in, but if you can navigate through a browse window really quick, you can go in there and you can find just that right page inside your folder structure pretty easily. Of course, you can point to the outside world as well. That's not an issue. But in this case, they want us to find the default ASPX in the root of the site, and then click OK. I'm going to go ahead and click OK again, and I know that you guys, if you're looking at that link, you might be questioning its format a little bit, right? So I'm going to the source code view here, and you notice that the link has preceding it a ... And what is that for? It's for folder structure. Now, keep in mind, table demo, the file that we're currently working on, is inside the demos folder. But default ASPX is in the root of the site. If it was in the same folder, and see, here's the problem. There is one called default ASPX in the same folder, and that happens in these types of projects. It would go to this page, not the page I want it to go to. So in order to be able to go to the one in the root, I have to go up a folder level. So ... just simply means go up one folder and then look for the file. And that's one of those navigation things. You should have learned that in HTML1, but if you don't know it, you'll learn it quick, right? Because you probably would just type default ASPX in there, and then maybe it's going to the other page. You're like, no, it works. Oh yeah, it works, but it's not the right version of it working. Okay, so, and that's something you're going to notice a lot in these environments. Another reason, in some cases, why you might want to use the graphical tool, because it makes inserting that not only accurate, but much easier. It does not excuse not understanding it, though. So in some ways, here's where I might revert back to some old school methods and say it's kind of good to understand what that's doing instead of just letting the tool do it. Because I don't want you to be in like a job situation going, what's ... Of course, you can Google it and figure it out, but you still have to understand how that works. All right. Next thing that we're going to do here is we're going to save our work, Control S to save, and then I'm going to right-click the file this time, and what the book wants us to do is instead of hitting the play button, they want us to right-click and then view in browser. And then really you should try the link and make sure it goes back to the right page. All right, once again, back to Visual Studio. Do you guys notice any differences with Visual Studio right now? The play button is not active, right? As opposed to I did this, and then in Visual Studio, I had a stop button. In this approach, go back. That was an Alt-Tab, by the way. See how that's a little bit different? Really what's happening is it's not engaging the debug engine to do that. So if you just want to take a quick look at a page without it throwing the debugger into the mix, that's one way to do it. And frankly, that's often really what you want to do. You just want to see what the page looks like. You don't really care if the C# code in the back is right or wrong. You just want to get the page to show. If it really does have a problem, the debugger will stop you anyhow. Well, folks, that wraps up the chapter. We finished all the exercises, and I think we did it successfully. So we're going to take a break here in class, and we'll come back and work on the next chapter. Actually, one last thing before we break. Somebody had a question here at the bottom of page 61 in step 8. They were talking about how we can use the tools that are built into Visual Studio from the code view to help create links as well. So here I have the link is already created, the code for it, and whether I have something to link to or not within the code view, I can simply get my cursor anywhere within those quotes, hold down the Control key, press the space bar, and it brings up this little pop-up menu here from which I can either select the page directly or use the Pick URL tool, and it brings up that interface to where I can select the page that I want. Yeah, and that was the expectation, but it was different than what you saw. And folks, as you're watching this video, please remember there's different versions of Visual Studio and they behave differently. I'm using Visual Studio 2015 Community Edition. It's probably the preferred version right now for you to use. There's a new one coming out soon, but choose wisely. All right, folks, that wraps this video, and I'll see you in the next one.